Hello friends. So in the previous lecture we were considering comminution specifically. So we saw that the process of comminution, which is largely involved in liberation, the techniques that are predominantly involved can be categorized into two. So these techniques, they can be referred to as crushing or they can be referred to as grinding. We saw that in the previous lecture that there are certain distinguishing features that are associated with crushing, and there are certain other features that are largely associated with grinding. Despite these distinguishing features, if you consider the mechanical load that is imposed on the run-of-mine particles, in both these cases, these are largely compressive loads. So of course, there are several features that are different when you compare crushing to grinding. So one key distinction is that crushing involves rather rigidly fixed surfaces that brings about the fragmentation of the particles, whereas grinding involves grinding media, spherical objects that fall upon these run-of-mine large particles and then break them into fragments. And also crushing involves several stages, while grinding, in case of grinding, you can achieve a specific reduction ratio just through one pass. And in case of grinding, you have the possibility of achieving both wet and dry grind, whereas in case of crushing, it is just dry grind or just dry crushing alone largely. Now, despite these differences, if you consider the mechanical load that is being imposed on this run-of-mine particles, the large size run-of-mine particles that has been blasted out of a mine, these particles, they experience largely compressive load in the system. What you impose is a compressive load onto these particles. However, because of the Poisson's ratio, this compressive load, it translates to tensile load in the direction perpendicular to the compressive loading direction. And this tensile load is what introduces a discontinuity in the system. Discontinuities in the system, and discontinuities, we refer to them as cracks after reaching a specific size, and these cracks, they grow and lead to the formation of fractures, and these fractures, they propagate and ultimately lead to fragmentation. Cracks, they grow and the fractures, they propagate. And this is the theoretical sequence that is involved while considering the fragmentation or comminution of a run-of-mine particle. Irrespective of crushing or grinding, these are the theoretical sequence that are involved when you want to fragment or when you want to establish fragmentation in a given large size particles. Now, in the previous lecture, we saw that we considered the atomistic scale or the atomic position or the position of the entities, and then we saw that when you impose a tensile loading, there is a change in the equilibrium position of the entities. So the tensile loading, when you impose it on a mineral, so when you impose a tensile loading on a mineral, the characteristic feature of the mineral involves the entities that constitute a mineral, they occupy a specific position, and these specific positions are not random, but they are a stable position, and that belongs to a lowest energy configuration. So the stable positions of the entities that dictate the overall arrangement, regular arrangement of these entities in the mineral, they are not any random positions, but they are, if you could recollect our previous discussions, they are a stable position, they are an equilibrium position. So therefore, any movement away from this equilibrium position, it means that we are increasing the energy of the system. Now, when we impose a tensile loading, what essentially happens is that we are increasing the distance between these entities that constitute a mineral. So therefore, when we impose a tensile loading, so let us again consider the distance between the entities, that is the bond length. So the entities are bonded together, and the distance between the entities are nothing but the bond length that is established between them, and it is referred to as A. And the A naught is the equilibrium or the stable bond length. Now, when you impose a tensile loading and you gradually increase the tensile loading, this bond length keeps on increasing. So essentially you are increasing the tensile loading and correspondingly the bond length keeps on increasing. And after a while, there is an discontinuity that is introduced because of the breakage of bonds. So the breakage of bonds occur at specific positions, and this breakage of bond, what essentially it does is that it introduces a discontinuity, and once a discontinuity in a specific position is reached, then in the surrounding region, the change in the bond length is resumed back to its original position. So in a region, once a discontinuity is introduced, a crack is introduced, the crack, it allows the discontinuity, it allows the entities that surround it to get back to its original stable position. So that means when the discontinuity is introduced, the entities surrounding the crack are allowed to get back to its original position. So that means the increased bond length is now allowed to get back to its original position and reach the value that is of the equilibrium value. So this is how schematically you could represent the change in the bond length between the two entities that are adjacent to a discontinuity or a crack. So when you have a specific crack that is being introduced in a continuous mineral, now in the entities surrounding this crack, they initially experience the increase in the bond length, and once the crack is introduced at this point, the bonds break and the discontinuity is introduced. Then because of the introduction of these discontinuities, the surrounding entities are allowed to relax and they are allowed to get back to their original position, and that is what you see here. So here it is entirely the action of the stress, and from here to the getting back to the original position, from the top in from the highest point to from the maximum to getting back to the original stable position of the bond length, it is achieved by the relaxation. Now when there is an increase in the bond length, what we essentially have is increase in an energy of the system, and that we refer to as the elastic energy. So this is nothing but stored elastic energy. So this energy is not being exclusively seen anywhere else. We don't see certain behavior that is associated with this energy. This energy is just being stored in the system in the form of change in the bond length. And once your discontinuity is introduced, this stored energy is being relaxed and the system gets back to its lowest energy configuration. At least the part of the system that surrounds the cavity get back to its original energy configuration. So what you have is, you have a cycle of events. There is an increase in the elastic energy of the system, and in specific region it is being relaxed. Now this I am understanding we gained from the atomistic consideration, the considering individual entities that are present in the minerals. So if you could recollect in the previous lecture, we considered like 3 layers of atoms, and based on our understanding of what happens to these 3 layers of atoms when we impose a specific load, particularly the tensile load, what happens to these layers of atom helped us gain this understanding of the change in the bond length rather. Now if you step back, if you zoom out and then consider a microscopic understanding. So what I mean by that is, instead of considering the individual entities or the combination of entities or layers of entities, let us have a close to a mesoscopic understanding. Mesoscopic meaning, let us consider the sample as a whole. So the mesoscopic scale, it is between microscopic and macroscopic. Macroscopic is something that you see. Microscopic is wherein you would use your optical microscope or other microscope to understand. So between your microscopic and the macroscopic, you would have your mesoscopic. So yeah, that's something you could terminology you could learn by the way. Now So what essentially we are considering is that we are not considering the individual entities, we are not considering rather a mineral as we see a mineral particle, a large run-of-mine particle as it is, but a section of this large run-of-mine particles. So we are not considering atomistic, we are not considering microscopic, we are not considering the overall run-of-mine particle, but a section of this overall run-of-mine particle. Now here in this section of the overall run-of-mine particle, we are introducing a tensile load. So when we are introducing a tensile load, almost in all of this region, there is a change in the bond length. So there is a change because the tensile load is assume that it is uniformly acting, and let us consider in this specimen or in this section of the run-of-mine particle, the tensile load is uniformly acting, and therefore as a consequence of it, all the entities that are present in this section of the run-of-mine particles, in this specimen rather, what we have is there is a change in the bond length, there is an increase in the bond length. So that means as indicated in blue, the blue indicates the overall increase in the energy of the system, that is we are adding elastic energy, or we are increasing the stored elastic energy, adding stored elastic energy to the system by virtue of this tensile loading. Now when a discontinuity occurs at the center, let us assume that the discontinuity is elliptical. When such a discontinuity occurs at the center, so what it means is that the introduction of the discontinuity means we are breaking the bonds at specific positions. So we are breaking the bonds at specific position, and it is a localized position. Again, this is for our theoretical understanding. It is a localized position. We have a section of our overall particle, we are imposing a tensile load, and there is an introduction or the breaking of bond that introduces a discontinuity, and this discontinuity is introduced through the breaking of bonds, and this discontinuity is referred to as the crack. Now once you have introduced the crack, in the region surrounding this crack, what we observe is a relaxation of the strain that has been imposed by the tensile loading. Now, because of the tensile loading, the overall sample, the overall material that we have considered is strained, and in the localized position of this material, there is a discontinuity that is introduced, a crack that is introduced. Because of this introduction of the crack, what we essentially now have is a way for the surrounding particles to relax. So because of the crack, as it is shown in the green here, you have the surrounding particles that are, or surrounding entities that are allowed to relax. Now since these entities are allowed to relax, what essentially is happening is the overall elastic energy because of this relaxation is decreasing in the system. You have increased the energy through the elastic stored energy, and because certain section it relaxes and certain section of the specimen is allowed to go back to its original form because of this formation of the discontinuity, then discontinuity allows for, it can be stated that the discontinuity allows for the reduction in the elastic stored energy. So the formation of discontinuity in a continuous system. So what you are considering is a continuous medium. The formation of a discontinuity in a continuous medium allows for the relaxation of the bond length to its original position. So allows for the relaxation of a certain amount of elastic energy, relaxation of the certain amount of certain section of the bonds. So that means crack, introduction of crack, the nucleation of crack in one way reduces the elastic energy of the system. Now when we say the breaking up of bonds, when we say the introduction of the discontinuity, what we mean by that is we are now creating, as we discussed in the previous lecture, we are now creating a specific surface in these discontinuities. So in these discontinuities or the crack, we are creating a specific surface. So since we have assumed our crack to be elliptical, so these are the new surfaces that are being formed. Now depending on the bonds that we break in order to create this surface, the surface energy of this region would vary. Again, depending on the bonds that we break in order to create, in order to introduce the surface, the surface energy per unit area would vary. So the surface energy per unit area is usually a constant, and this surface area energy per unit area, it depends on the mineral that we are considering, because it is dependent on the bonds that we break. So essentially what we are doing is we are breaking certain bonds and then we are creating a discontinuity or a crack, and the energy surface area, not as a whole but surface area or the surface energy per unit area rather, for a specific unit area, it is a material property. It is dependent on the bonds that we break. So you have, it was supposed to be a continuous bond, and now we have broken down this continuous bond and we have created a surface, and depending on the bonds that we have broken, we correspondingly have our surface energy per unit area. And now when you cumulatively consider the surface energy per unit area and the overall area of the crack that you have considered, we ultimately end up with the overall surface energy of the crack here. So the surface energy that is being introduced in the system because of the tensile loading. So you are imposing a tensile loading. What you are essentially doing is you are imposing a tensile loading. This tensile loading, it does two things. Initially, in the first stage, it creates a displacement from the original position of the entities. So it moves the original entities, the entities from its original position to somewhere else, thereby increasing the elastic energy, elastic stored energy within the system. And beyond certain limit, in specific positions, we have a discontinuity that is being formed. So the first step is the introduction of elastic stored energy and increase in it. And second step involves the introduction of a discontinuity. Beyond certain limit, you introduce a discontinuity. And this discontinuity, the energy of the discontinuity or the energy of the crack that is introduced by this discontinuity, it depends on two factors. One is a material related factor, that is depending on the bond that you break. The surface energy, the energy of the surface per unit area, it would vary. So it is a material dependent property. So if you assume it to be gamma, then you can multiply it with the overall surface, and that would ultimately lead you to the overall surface energy that is being introduced in the system. So essentially what you are doing is you are trying to increase the energy of the system by introducing a new surface, and this new surface is combination of the surface area and surface energy or energy per unit surface. So this is the product, and here, so this is the surface energy per unit area, and this is the amount of surface that is being created, amount of crack surface that is being created. This is a material property. The reason it is a material property or it is a mineral property is primarily because it depends on the bond that we break. Now, the overall change in the energy of the system is the combination of these two. So, the surface energy, the introduction of the surface and the associated surface energy, it attempts to increase the overall energy of the system, because through the tensile load that you are imposing, you are increasing or you are introducing a new surface that was not previously there. So therefore, you are increasing through the introduction of the surface, you are increasing the energy of the system. Now, this increase in the energy of the system has led to, or this increase in the energy of the system specifically through the formation of discontinuity or the nucleation of crack has led to the reduction in the elastic stored energy in the neighboring area. So therefore, the elastic stored energy, it decreases the overall energy of the system. So we have these two combinations that are that play with each other, that mingle with each other, or rather they interact with each other. So you have a formation of a surface, and this surface or the energy of the surface per unit area, it is a material property. It depends on the material, and you include the overall surface area to calculate the energy of the surface, and this energy of the surface, it increases the overall energy of the system that we have seen here. Now, when you consider the relaxation or the elastic energy, because of this introduction of the surface, meaning because of the introduction of the crack, what we essentially have is we have relaxation of this elastic energy in the surrounding region, and this overall energy change in the system is the combination of the introduction of the surface energy and the elastic energy. So the overall change in the system, if you say delta E, again assuming that once you have introduced your crack, assuming that the tensile load is held to be constant, in that case the overall change in the energy of the system, it comprises of the surface energy and the elastic energy. There is a negative sign here primarily because the surface energy, it increases the overall energy of the system, while the elastic relaxation energy, it decreases the overall energy of the system. Now a system is allowed to move from one state to another when the energy change is negative. So this is just some of the fundamental understanding that you consider two positions of a system, and when you want the system to change from one position to another, the system would change when the other position is its lowest energy state. So you can just consider a system like this, and your system is in here position 1. It will move automatically from position 1 to 2 when, because the position 2 is in the lowest energy state. So that means the energy of position 2 must be lower than the energy of position 1, and the difference in the energy, that is E2 minus E1, the difference in the energy, that is E2 minus E1, should be less than 0, that is it should be negative. So a system often moves to the lowest energy state. Whatever state it is in, it often attempts to move to the lowest energy state. So the lowest energy state can be quantified, it can be understood by considering the change in the energy. So therefore, when you consider the change in the energy, when the change in the energy is negative, then we could say that the system will move from this state 1 to state 2. The system will move towards new stable state, new lowest energy state. Okay. Now if you consider the same, if you apply the same fundamental understanding to this condition here, the system would reach its lowest energy state when delta E is less than 0, when it is negative. Now the delta E can be negative only when the relaxation of elastic energy is greater than the surface energy that is associated with the crack. So when a crack is formed, when a crack is nucleated, when a discontinuity is introduced, there is an amount of relaxation that is being introduced into the system. There is an amount of elastic energy relaxation that is induced into the system. And in addition to that, we have, because of the formation of new surfaces, we have a surface energy associated with it. Now, the formation of such crack is favorable only when the elastic energy that is being relaxed, or the elastic energy that is being removed from the system, is greater than that of the surface energy that is associated with the crack. Only then your crack would be stable, or only then you will have a stable nucleation of the cracks. So what essentially you have is, you have an interplay between surface energy and the elastic energy that governs the overall change in the energy of the system, when, if and only if the overall change in the energy of the system is less than 0, only then you will be having the stable formation of the crack or stable growth of the crack. So when you want to have a crack to be formed, the crack should, the amount of elastic relaxation that this crack achieves should be always greater than the surface energy associated with the crack. So this is the energy criteria that is associated with the formation of a stable crack that ultimately leads to the fracture and ultimately leads to the fragmentation of your particles. So essentially we want to establish a fragmentation of the particles, and it can be achieved only when you allow the formation of a stable crack. A stable crack, so this criteria is what allows or governs the formation of a stable crack. If this condition is not satisfied, as soon as the discontinuity is formed, since the surface area is greater, it will close back and the continuity will be re-established, or the crack will not be allowed to grow further, the crack will not be allowed to change into fracture. So it will remain an unstable crack. So crack can be only stable when the amount of relaxation it establishes within the system is greater than that of the surface energy associated with the crack. Now, a way to ensure that this surface energy, so the elastic energy that is associated with the system, it again depends on the bond, and it again depends on the load that you are providing. So when you are, of course, you can ensure that the elastic energy or the large amount of elastic energy relaxation is achieved by ensuring that you are imposing a large amount of loading. So that is one way of doing it. On the other way, the stable crack, that is the overall change in the elastic or the overall change in the energy of the system, can be maintained to be less than 0 by ensuring that this energy is always low. So there are two ways of ensuring that the overall change in the energy of the system is negative, meaning there is two ways of ensuring that we have a formation of stable crack that ultimately leads to the fragmentation of our particle. One is by ensuring that we have a large or significant amount of relaxation, and this again it has to do with the bond length and the material property and the external load that we impose. So it has several parameters associated with it. Or on the other hand, we can ensure that the amount of surface area that is introduced by the amount of surface energy that is associated with the crack is often low. So when you make this term here low or lower, or when you reduce the surface energy associated with the crack and keep the amount of relaxation that is constant, we will be able to achieve this criteria. Now one way of doing that is by introducing appropriate medium during the fragmentation or comminution process. So what essentially we want to do is we want to have nucleation of stable cracks. Now when we want to have the nucleation of stable cracks, we need to ensure that the overall change in the energy is less than 0. So there are two ways of doing it. One way is to work with the stored elastic energy, relaxation of the stored elastic energy. However, the way to govern the relaxation of the stored elastic energy is quite difficult. So therefore, the other way of going about is reducing the surface energy associated with the crack. Now, when you reduce the surface energy associated with the crack and keep the stored elastic energy to be constant, then in that case also the overall change in the energy can be made favorable to us. Now the way the surface energy associated with the crack can be reduced is by using appropriate medium. Now if a specific if the surface energy between the particular surface here and say air is gamma 1, and the surface energy between this surface here and a specific medium is gamma 2, and the gamma 2 is significantly less than gamma 1, then in that case the surface area or surface energy that is associated with a specific medium will also be significantly lower than the surface energy associated with air. So what essentially we have done is we have replaced the air that surrounds your material or mineral with a specific medium, and now that you have replaced the air with a specific medium, this medium has reduced the surface energy per unit area, that is gamma. So we saw that this gamma is a material property, and the medium has now reduced this material property, because now what we are calculating is not the surface area or the energy, surface energy between the mineral and the air, but now we are calculating the surface energy between a specific medium and the mineral, and this surface energy we refer to as gamma 2, and the surface energy between the mineral and the air as gamma 1. And because of this introduction of the specific medium, we have arrived at this criteria, and this we have arrived at this relation, that is the gamma 2, the surface energy that is associated with mineral and a specific medium is significantly lower than the surface energy between the mineral and the air, and therefore the corresponding surface energy between the mineral and the medium is significantly lower than the surface energy between the mineral and the air. And therefore, by introducing the mineral, since we are now able to reduce the surface energy, we are now able to reduce the surface energy contribution, ultimately we are able to achieve the overall negative change in the energy. That means we are able to establish a stable crack, and that is the reason why we have the concept of wet crushing or wet grinding rather. So in wet grinding, what we have is we introduce a medium. This medium, it interacts with the surface, that is particularly the newly formed crack surface. By interacting with it, it reduces the surface energy per unit area, that is the gamma here, or once you are able to reduce the surface energy per unit area, you are ultimately reducing the surface energy, and once you are reducing the surface energy, the elastic relaxation is constant. So that means you are favoring the formation of stable cracks, and therefore stiff wet grinding enables us to have, one of the reason we have wet grinding is to facilitate the formation of stable cracks. Now if you consider the graphical representation of what we have discussed so far, so what we essentially consider is the interaction of two different energies. Now one of the energy is surface energy that increases with the area of the surface, and again we saw it is the product of surface energy per unit area and the overall area of the crack, and as the cracks keep on growing, the overall surface energy, it keeps on increasing. So the overall surface energy, rather E surface, it keeps on increasing as the cracks keep on growing. The reason it keeps on increasing as cracks keep on growing is because you have a product of a constant and a variable, and the variable here is the surface area. When you say a crack keeps on growing, it means that surface area keeps on increasing. So ultimately the overall energy associated with surface keeps on increasing. Now we saw in the previous schematic representation, when your cracks grow, the area adjacent to it, the area surrounding it, it experiences a relaxation in the elastic strain. So that means as the cracks keep on growing, the relaxation in the strain is also experienced. So the relaxation in the elastic strain is also experienced. So ultimately, when you consider the overall change in the energy, that is, you combine the surface area and you combine the elastic relaxation, then the overall change will be something like this. So the overall energy which comprises of the both surface and the elastic strain will be of this form here. Now whenever, so again this is dependent on, let us assume that our crack is being, the size of our crack is being estimated by a parameter C. So when C increases, essentially the size of the crack is increasing, so therefore the surface area is increasing, and since the crack increasing the size of the crack means the adjacent area also increases, so the relaxation is higher, so the elastic energy relaxation is also higher. So, and this is the overall energy change, or the overall change in the energy of the system. So as the crack size increases, you have such a change in the surface energy, elastic energy, and the overall energy of the system. Now at this point you have a balance between the surface energy and the elastic energy, and the relaxation of elastic energy or the elastic energy of the system. At this maxima here you have a balance. So let us assume to be C naught, there is a balance between the elastic energy and the surface energy of the system. Now your crack will be stable when the size of the crack is greater than C naught, which characterizes the balance in the surface energy and the elastic energy. So there is a specific size of crack that indicates the balance between the surface energy and elastic energy, and only when the size of your crack, or the crack that we are attempting to introduce, is greater than this particular size, wherein you have the balance between the elastic and surface energy, you will be having the formation of stable crack. So when considering the formation of stable crack from the perspective of the crack size length, then the criteria for formation of stable crack is expressed in this manner. So this is one way of representing the criteria for formation of stable crack. The other way of representing it, based on our understanding of the difference energy that is associated with the crack formation, is the change in the energy of the system should be less than 0. This is something that we saw in the previous slide. So the formation of stable crack can be expressed from the perspective of the size of the crack and also from the change in the energy of the system. Now so far what we have seen is, we have seen that introduction of a tensile loading, of course introduction of a compressive load, it introduces as a consequence a tensile loading because of the Poisson's effect, and this tensile loading, it introduces or it leads to the formation or introduction of a stored elastic energy, and beyond certain limit you have the formation of cracks. And because once the crack is formed, you have the interplay of surface energy and the elastic energy, stored elastic energy, and depending on the interplay you will be able to establish if the discontinuity that is introduced is stable or if it is unstable. If it is stable, it will be allowed to grow. Now, one key factor that we have not considered here is the stress that is being introduced into the system. Of course, it is the stress that allows for the formation of the discontinuity. So once we consider once the discontinuity is formed, we have restricted our consideration just to two energy parameters, that is the surface energy and elastic energy. So only these two energy parameters we have considered once the discontinuity is formed. Before the formation of discontinuities, we assume that the stress is increasing leading to the formation of discontinuity. Once the discontinuity is formed, we have restricted our consideration to just the surface energy and the elastic energy. However, once the discontinuity is introduced, there is a local change in the tensile load that is acting on the system. So what I mean by that is, let us go back to our mesoscopic consideration of the material. So again, here we will consider a case wherein the discontinuity is already has been introduced. So we have increased our loading, the tensile loading, in such a way that the discontinuity has already been introduced. Now once the discontinuity is introduced, it is observed that in specific regions surrounding these discontinuities, again we are assuming our discontinuity to be elliptical, the discontinuity or our crack to be elliptical. So once a discontinuity is formed, once a crack is nucleated, it is observed that the stress or the mechanical load that can be translated into stress. So again, the mechanical load is, we refer to them as P, and their distribution within a system. So externally what you are doing is you are imposing a mechanical load into the system, and their distribution within the system is expressed in the form of stress, and this stress is nothing but load by the cross section of your material, so load per unit area. So externally you are imposing load, and internally when you want to study how the load is experienced within the material, you consider stress. Now what happens is, even though initially before the formation of the discontinuity, the stress that is experienced within the material can be assumed to be uniform. However, once a discontinuity is introduced, in specific region the stress is considerably higher. So what I mean by that is, it has been observed that once a discontinuity is introduced, in the sharp areas of the discontinuities, the stress is considerably higher when compared to the others. Now specifically, since we are considering the elliptically shaped crack, it has been observed that, so you can just write down or express the way the stress surrounding the specific region, the specific spots adjacent to the elliptical crack. So when you consider such a setup, the stress again surrounding the crack is rather proportional to twice the square root of the crack length. So we have considered the crack length to be C, or the dimension, the let's just say the longitudinal dimension of this elliptical crack, or if since we have elliptical, so the major axis, let us assume it to be 2C, and so let us assume this to be 2C, and this dimension here we can assume it, or since the overall major axis we have treated it as 2C, and this here would be C, and when the C increases, what we mean by that is growth of this crack. Now when you have such an elliptical discontinuity in a system wherein you have tensile load that is imposing, the stress that is close to the tip of this crack of the major axis length or semi-major axis length C is greater than the stress that you are imposing. So let us sigma A be the stress that you are imposing, and when you are comparing the stress that is surrounding this crack, so sigma C, it is the stress that is surrounding the crack, sigma A, it is the one that is that you are imposing, it is nothing but it is 2 times square root of C greater than the stress that you are imposing. So essentially you are imposing a stress. So in these regions are experiencing a stress of sigma A. So you are essentially imposing a stress of sigma A. because of the crack, there is this term greater than, or this many times the stress is greater than the actual stress that is being imposed. So in the regions adjacent to the crack, once you have a nucleation of a crack, once you have a formation of a stable crack, in the region adjacent to this crack, the concentration of stress, the amount of stress, it increases. So if you want to, we can try to visualize it in a better way. So what essentially you have is a system, and in this system you have your crack that is of elliptical nature. The tensile load that you are imposing, it introduces a stress of sigma A within the system. However, because of this crack here in these regions, you observe, rather you identify or you realize an increased stress. And when you consider the increased stress in relation to the stress you apply, you would notice that this increased stress that you observe adjacent to the crack, it depends on the size of the crack, and the way it is related is in this manner. So if you take the ratio, the increased stress that is observed adjacent to the crack is dependent on the size of the crack, twice the square root of the semi-major axis length of the crack. So approximately there is this many times increase in the stress around the crack, that is a stable crack that is introduced in the system. So even though you are applying only this load, because of the introduction of the stable crack, what essentially happens is there is a stress increase in the stress adjacent to the crack. Now if I consider just a section of it, so let me just consider this section here. Use a different color, so let me just consider this section here. If I consider this section here and then try to replot it, what I would have is a portion of my crack and the system surrounding it, and when I consider the amount of stress at this point here and here, so in these dotted regions, if I consider the stress at these dotted lines, then I would observe that, so I would notice that in this region here, a region far away, in this point here, so in this point, say A here, the stress that is experienced might be close to the one that we are applying. So in point A, the stress that is being experienced is close to the one that we are imposing. However, as you move closer to the crack, the stress, it increases. So let me use a blue line here. So the stress, it increases. So from the overall system till point A, you experience the system experience. So if you consider the system as a whole, from the other points till point A, from the other points away from the crack to point A, you experience, the system experiences a uniform stress of sigma A. However, as you begin to go closer to the crack, then the stress increases because of the relation here. So therefore at this point here, you have a maximum amount of stress that is introduced by crack. So essentially for a system like this, the distribution of crack would look something like this. For a system like this, a distribution of crack, particularly in the major axis of this discontinuity, would look, the stress distribution, again let me highlight it in blue, so the stress distribution would look something like this. You will have high concentration of stress at the ends, and that gradually decreases as you move away from the crack. Now what does this mean is that once you have introduced a stable crack, in addition to your surface energy and your elastic energy, you need to account for the increased energy. So increased stress that is introduced by, you need to account for rather the increased stress that is introduced by the crack. So what you have is, you have two energies, one that is opposing the formation of crack. The surface energy, by increasing the overall energy of the system, it is opposing the formation of crack, while the elastic relaxation energy, it favors the formation of crack and growth of the crack because it means relaxation of the elastic energy in the surrounding region. Now we have a third contributor, that is the energy, the stress that is associated or that is introduced, the increase in stress that is brought about by the stable crack. So this is the reason why, or this ratio is referred to as the stress concentration. So what you essentially have is, around a crack there is a significant increase in the stress, and this increase in the stress is quantified by the ratio of the stress around the crack and the overall imposed stress. And since it is greater, this sigma c is greater than sigma e, we refer to it as stress concentration, and the crack is referred to as the stress concentrator. So what you have is, around the crack you have a stress that is greater than the applied stress. Because of the presence of crack, you have a stress that is greater than the applied stress, and that phenomena is called as stress concentration. So when you take the ratio of the applied, or rather the stress surrounding the crack and the applied stress, the ratio will be greater than 0, meaning the stress surrounding the crack is higher. So therefore we refer to it as stress concentration and the crack as stress concentrator. So what essentially then it will mean that the stress acting in the neighborhood of the crack is higher. So when you have a stress that is higher in the neighborhood of the crack, it also favors the growth of the crack. It also favors or furthers or wants to propagate the growth of the crack. So we have interaction between three different components. One is the surface energy. It wants to hinder the growth of the crack by increasing the energy of the system. Then we have two other energies, two other contributions. One is the elastic energy that brings about the relaxation of the system, and thereby it wants to allow the stress to grow. And finally what you have is the increase in the stress surrounding the crack that also wants to favor the growth of the crack. So interaction of these three allows for the transformation of a stable crack into fracture. So often we have seen the stable crack can only be formed when the elastic strain energy is greater than that of the surface energy. So this condition has already been stratified, because only then you will have a formation of stable crack. Add to this criterion here, then you would have the growth of a crack. So ultimately you will have a stable growth of a crack. So the formation of a crack through the stress concentration ultimately leads to the propagation of a crack, leading to a fracture. So initially, for the formation of a stable crack, you need the combination of surface and elastic energy. And once the stable crack is formed, what you essentially have is, you have essentially established an increased stress condition around the crack that allows for its propagation and thereby allows for the crack to transform into a fracture. So this is largely what we have, with what we understand when you consider the theoretical aspects of the fragmentation. So from the theoretical aspect of fragmentation, the stable formation of stable crack, because of the stress concentration associated with it ultimately leads to its growth and turning it into fracture. So with this, I would like to wind this lecture up, and in the subsequent lecture we will be considering how different forms or how different fragments are arrived, or different shapes of or different forms of these fragments are formed by these fracture or the propagation of these cracks. So we will see ourselves in the next lecture. Goodbye.